Hey everyone, how's it going? Elliot here again. I have every single Nintendo Game Boy in front of me, as well as the newest console by Nintendo and handheld by Nintendo, the Nintendo Switch Lite. We have the DMG Game Boy that was released in 1989, the Game Boy Pocket that was released in 1997, the Game Boy Lite was also released in 1997, only in Japan, the Game Boy Color was in 1998, then we went over to the Game Boy Advance, which came out in the year 2000, followed by the Gameboy SP, which I think was 2001 or 2002, and then the Game Boy Micro was 2005. So this thing actually really isn't very retro at all, but it's a lovely little thing. So the DMG is quite literally double the thickness of the Nintendo Switch. It's pretty much the same width though, which is quite interesting. Obviously Nintendo was sort of sticking to their handheld form factors, but obviously this one is in landscape versus the portrait one. It's very, very interesting to see how far everything has come, but technology doesn't always need to advance. You know, we have got these joysticks up here, but I actually still really prefer the physical D-pads, and I was very upset to find out that Link's Awakening does not operate with the D-pad. It can only be used with the joystick, which sucks. The action buttons we have doubled. There's now obviously L and R buttons, 2 of each side, and we've got more buttons up here and more buttons down here. This thing is a very minimalistic 5-button layout. Next up is the Game Boy Pocket. Now this thing definitely stands up to the test of time because it's pretty much exactly the same thickness. The only reason we have a bulge here is to take the cartridge and the battery port. So yeah, this thing actually pretty much is the same thickness. The Game Boy Lite is pretty much the same size as the Game Boy Pocket, just has a slightly bigger bulge on the back to cater for 2 AA's versus AAA's, and yeah, besides that it's the same. Shame we haven't got any sort of translucent models on this Nintendo Switch. They didn't do that for the original Switch either. Next up is the Game Boy Color. Now this surprisingly stands up to the test of time very, very well, especially considering Link's Awakening DX is obviously a game that's just been remade for the Nintendo Switch, and I have played so much of it, it's actually tragic. I absolutely love this game, and it really has translated very well onto the Nintendo Switch Lite. The Game Boy Advance is where we started to see Nintendo's landscape consoles come out, and yeah, surprisingly this thing does not look too far from it at all. The screen is obviously increased in size. The resolution, the aspect ratio rather, is pretty much the same at this point. The D-pad is the same size. The action buttons are all a very similar color. Yeah, actually this looks really, really good compared to it. Obviously there wasn't a light turquoisey blue design of the Game Boy Advance, but yeah, this thing looks fantastic. After that was the Game Boy Advance SP. Now this one came out because we wanted a backlight, and we still hadn't had one since the Game Boy Lite, but since that wasn't released in the UK, we had to sort of make do with just those little wiggly lights, or in the US as well. This came out, this had a front light. This is actually a AGS 101, which did have a backlight, which makes playing games a lot nicer. I don't know if you've actually experienced a backlight on a Game Boy before. They weren't as mainstream as the front light Game Boy Advances, but yeah, this is a very, very nice experience indeed. And honestly, this really, really stands up when you compare it to the Switch Lite, especially when playing, you know, Link's Awakening, because it is a game that was remade literally just, you know, recently. So there is a side-by-side of me in the pretty much exact same space of the Game Boy version versus the new Nintendo Switch Lite version. I think it's really, really cool to see that the games are still very much current and good, and you know, people still want to play them, because otherwise they wouldn't have re-released it for the Switch Lite. And yeah, I've played so much of this game, it's unreal. Yeah, this is very, very good. It's pretty much the same thickness as the Switch Lite, and this aspect ratio is pretty similar. The button layout is, you know, pretty similar, but obviously this is a portrait sort of device versus the landscape one. D-pad is the same size. Action buttons are a little bit smaller on the newer console. We still use very similar technology, you know, micro switched things and surface mount switched on the buttons, the action buttons. So it's really cool to see that they're still sort of sticking to everything that they've done. This is using a membrane technology as well, which is actually more reminiscent in these older ones. The Gameboy Advance Sp uses a surface mount switch versus like a rubber contact and membrane. Here is the Game Boy Micro then. This thing is very small. Obviously it didn't have backwards compatibility, it only played the actual Game Boy Advance games. But yeah, look at the size difference. I don't know, 5 or 6 times smaller than the Switch Lite. It's really cool to see how Nintendo have actually advanced so far, but at the same time they were doing so well back 15 years ago that they could fit everything into here. But obviously the technical specifications that this has over this little thing is just unfathomable. The difference in 15 years is pretty huge. So there we go. There is the brief comparison then between all of the Game Boys and the most newest console handheld by Nintendo. I hope you guys have enjoyed this video. It's really cool to see Link's Awakening being re-released on the Nintendo Switch. I really hope you guys get a chance to pick this up on the Nintendo Switch Lite, and if you do enjoy it, consider buying a Game Boy and chucking some batteries in it, give a little blow down the cartridge slot, and pick yourself up one of these as well. You'll surprise yourself. I hope you guys have enjoyed. If you're new to the channel, please subscribe, and I'll catch you in the next video. Peace.